You're here back at the Opera House, about to sing Faninal. Is this your first Faninal in Rosenkavalier?
Yes, it is. Yes, it will be, rather. I have been involved with several stabs at Strauss, but this is the first time with Rosenkavalier. So instead of, either listening to recordings of tinkly bells and little boys running on and picking up handkerchiefs or whatever, I'm actually in the middle of it all this time. I never thought I would be. I didn't think I'd ever be in Rosenkavalier, but I'm rather thrilled to be so. And it's lovely. We've got a lovely cast here. And after this, I go to the Met to do it immediately. And I'll be working with, it's a hard job, Renee Fleming and Susan Graham. And I think both of them have said that this is, this is it as far as those roles are concerned for them. So it's going to be emotional, to say the least.
What have you found out about Herr von Faninal as you've been working on it?
I wish you'd ask me that in about 2 weeks' time. What have I found out about it? Well, if I was Arthur Lowe-shaped, that's what I would be, I think. It's that pompous little Captain Mannering, except it's not quite like that. I think in John Schlesinger's vision of Faninal in his production, he'd made his money in the arms business, so making cannons and muskets, I suppose. He's that awful individual who can't fit into this society in which he's now found himself with as a nouveau riche, and struggles to do so, and struggles to emulate, of all people, Baron von Leichenau. It's interesting. I'm on the road to discovery, really. But I know his type.
Do you think, in a way, at that moment when the Marshal in the last act invites him into her carriage, that he changes? I always want to think that suddenly he becomes something rather better than he's been up to that point.
I think if Renee invited me into her carriage, I would change, definitely.
You've got a choice of two carriages.
Yes,
you could actually get Susan Graham's carriage.
That's right.
Well,
that's right. She's a fella. No, I think yes, there is that. I think there is a development. He's moved on. He's reached a different. Maybe he's qualified, or he's been accepted to a degree within that society. It has to start somewhere, and it's the beginning of that. The famous von Faninal family starts from that moment, perhaps, and goes on into I don't know, Steffenzweig and everything else for the 20th century. It's interesting. But Viennese society, any Viennese here? Is interesting and ever will be, I think. It's I always feel when I'm in Vienna, and it started many years ago, noticing how many postcards there were of Franz Josef in every shop. It was available. It's rather like being in Salzburg, and there are Mozart Kugel in every shop. And you think he's still living up there in the Hugendubelstrasse or wherever. And in Vienna, you still feel as though Franz Josef is going to walk around the corner. And when I first started going to Vienna, there was one of the Fiaker there. There was one particular driver who had the whiskers and everything. I mean, you could have sworn he was, he'd given up being emperor, and he was now running a little horse business around the Albertina. It's an interesting society, fascinating society.
Do you think knowing that gives you an insight into the layered nature of the opera too?
Oh, yes.
Helps you place yourself?
Oh, yes. That's my life. I was in Spoleto this summer and playing Gianni Schicchi. And it helps to leave your 14th century apartment, although it wasn't in the 14th century designed as an apartment, I suspect. But nevertheless, leaving it and going down into the little marketplace in Spoleto, which isn't smart or anything like that. It's just there. You get your few vegetables, and you're within that society. And I think you have to be like a sponge and just take it all in and observe. I love observing it all. And it's fun.
Yeah, and you, of course, were seeing Gianni Schicchi here before. You were kind of in the gap between the two productions.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
You walked into a ready-made production with Schicchi. What's it like? I've often wondered, for a singer to walk into a production that already exists. What can you bring of yourself?
Well, that's an interesting question. If I can relate that to the Rosenkavalier that we're doing at the moment, The house director putting it on is Andrew Sinclair, and he said very distinctly the other day, there is no hard and fast production here of John Schlesinger's really any longer. There's the skeleton of it, but what always happens on these occasions when a production is regurgitated, that the company, the house, whichever theatre it might be, will have engaged this artist and that artist because of their notoriety or whatever for those roles. And inevitably, you have to accommodate whatever it is that they bring, their strengths and their skills. And I think it would be silly to be rigidly conforming to what the original concept was, because it worked at that time, 25 years ago, but time has moved on, singers have moved on, some of them have died, and so I think it's only sensible and intelligent that we should accommodate the skills that we're bringing in at that particular moment. And mostly that is what happens, actually.
You had also been in a production, I think, in Los Angeles of Skiki,
Yes.
Which Woody Allen had directed.
You say that in a kind of...
No, with wonder and awe. I thought of you and Woody Allen. I mean, wonderful.
Wonder and awe, and yes. Well, yes, well, we're not related.
Oh, I've got the question wrong.
Perhaps even less so now than we were before we met. How best to describe this experience without engaging lawyers? It was. It would be interesting. Oh God.
We can pass on if you
No,
want.
I've got Tourette's. Let the Tourette's take over at this moment. The experience, I understand it, of those that work with him in the film studio and on sets and one thing and another, is not an easy one. It's his medium. He's hugely familiar with that, and genius, perhaps, I don't know. But it's a difficult process for those that get involved with it. And I remember speaking to someone here who said, "You're going to work with him?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, there'll not be much communication." And I said, "Nonsense. You know, I'm with him for a month. We'll have wonderful conversations and dinner on several occasions and, you know, exchange ideas about life, and I'll ask him about his films and things of that sort." Well, no, none of that ever happened. We've yet to have a conversation. And I mean, the truth of it is, that was the experience of working with him, but there have been not dissimilar experiences, not quite as extreme as this one, at other times. And a cast on that occasion will look at one another, they'll assess one another and give them the eye, if you like, and think, well, let's just get on with it and we'll make it work for ourselves. And sometimes that's necessary. I mean, I remember going to Munich for a new production of Fledermaus quite some years ago, a brilliant young new director. And the first day, as is often the case, you have the Konzeptionsgespräch, when it's described by the director how he sees this piece and how it will be played and his vision of it all. And the first thing he said was, "Guten Morgen. Zuerst habe ich habe keine Konzeption." So you think, oh dear, what are we going to do for 6 weeks? And we did suffer for 6 weeks. You know, it's at times like that. And you know, I mean, any experienced singer will know at that moment we're in for a bad time. And we had a bad time. I mean, it was so bad, that when we gave the dress rehearsal in the Staatsoper in Munich, at the end of the dress rehearsal, we came on to take our bows, and the orchestra booed. To a man and girl, the orchestra booed us. It was that bad. And then arrangements were made to alter the text and cut things and take that away. And it was advertised several weeks later as newly conceived version of Fledermaus. It was bad.